no rights at all, any more than what you or I have, about saying what goes on that road.
So who's got the legal right to shut that road?
Wiltshire
County Council. And what's their view, Wiltshire County Council?
They wish they could, their current opinion is they would prefer the government took back that particular right, because what actually happened was that the whole of the road system in this country used to be dealt with by the DOT, and basically
the DOT,
the Department of Transport, and the Ministry, well, Department of Transport. And what's actually happened is, in order to save money, they've now given that job to the councils all the way around the country, and they've cut their budget.
Okay.
So therefore, you now have the drove being controlled by the council rather than as part of the government's remit and a part of the DOT. That's actually what's happened.
Right, so would you like to respond to this question? The drove closure, is that likely?
I don't know. If I just give you a quick, from a police perspective, since the 344, so since the road that used to go along the old visitor centre has been closed, the whole dynamic of that road has just changed amazingly. We didn't quite. I don't think I wouldn't expect it to. It has, yeah.
Why?
The dynamic of which road? Can you explain?
Okay. If you're going from London, if you're going to London heading west, and where the road used to fork off to the right, and that's been closed off now.
Yeah.
Since that's been closed off, what's happening on the byways and along the 303 at that section has changed. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. Is where people used to head west, they'd see Stonehenge. They probably didn't really realise it was going to be there. And they used to go, oh, look, there it is. I shall nip off to the right and go and park up for 10 minutes. I can't be bothered to pay my £5 to get in. I'll go and stand by the fence, take my quick photograph, and I'm carrying on my way off to Exeter. And that's what people used to do. And it didn't really cause a jam. Now, what's happening instead is people going up 303 see Stonehenge, want desperately to stop to go and find. They might even go up to the visitor centre and they ask them to pay 14 quid or whatever, and they go and say, well, I'm going to do that. So they might come back. They might go along the byway 12 to park up there. And so we've got lots of people parking along byway 12 to come because they want to avoid paying the £14. Now the net result of that is that I've got people taking a right turn across the 303, which so as soon as the whole traffic jams up really quickly because it's a busy road. It's always been, but it's just a lot worse. But what I've noticed different is that people, because they park up on both sides of byway 12, they will walk along the 303. So in the past I've seen 60, 70 people walking along the 303, which is...
Are you talking about both sides of the 303 they're parking up on the drive?
I've got pictures of cars parked all the way down the 303.
You're talking about people crossing from the south side of the 303 to the north side of the 303.
That's when the police were there in quick enough, there was a roadblock. The police were searching everything going that year, about 5 years ago. Everyone had to park, or everyone come from London had to park. They knew they wouldn't get in the traffic out all the way down past. Like right past Stonehenge.
I think we're talking about
a half long.
I'm talking about day to day.
And that was why the police impounded about 70 or 80 vehicles, caused a lot of bad thing. And that was because the access into the car park was too slow.
Yeah.
That was the fault of badly organising. No one's personally at fault, but that year it's been solved since then. You can't get in quicker now. I've noticed it's got a lot better since then. That was a terrible year that year.
Okay, but that's not what I was talking about. I was talking about the day.
Well,
Willie, you have a lot of knowledge of the history of the system. No, absolutely. I'm totally aware of that.
Which year was that, Willie, please? I'm taking
about 5 years ago, there was a huge roadblock because they couldn't get to the car park quick enough. In the summer.
What I was just... Can I come back? Because what I was just talking about there was the droves and byway 12 and why there's concerns. Because it's becoming really dangerous if people taking a right turn on and off the 303 to go onto byway 12. And it's happening so much that we're having, as I say, 60, 70 people walking up the 303, which is a major road, fast road, and sooner or later someone will die.
Have there been any accidents yet?
No, but I don't want to wait for what to happen.
The last time cars parked
they've now
on the
stopped.
TRCS like that was 2 summers ago, and it was really, really, really hot, and they closed the A344 on for a temporary reason to see what effect it was. And cars parked on the A303 and we took photographs of it.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened since.
It has.
I've got
lots of photographs.
Can I just make a suggestion?
And I've got HGVs parking there.
I don't see.
Bollards being put in the way.
I don't see the closure of the byway is going to necessarily help. What I would say is that most other important attractions.
I personally don't want to see the byway
Yeah.
to 12 and closed.
They
I personally would like to see it closed to cars going on and off the 303. That's my only concern. The rest of it, I really don't care.
You can't get it from
No,
Lark
you
Hill.
can get it from Lark Hill.
You have to improve the access. You
Yeah,
have to make it clearer for the public.
but if you're asking from a policing perspective and Wiltshire Council perspective, because they're worried
from a safety perspective,
from a safety perspective,
it should be closed.
I lose sleep
I
about
have a question to ask you about what you just said then.
Go on, yeah.
Right, you reckon it's to do with safety. Okay.
For me, from my perspective.
Your perspective is safe. You won't be the only one that has that perspective because English Heritage have got the same one as well. They love spouting about safety.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, there is an issue with people turning right that can be easily rectified by a central island. It doesn't mean a minor modification, but banning vehicles going on the drove is exactly where you're going to have problems. You're rightly saying that you can act from the other end anyway. Yeah. So banning people from the drove. You're saying
well, he's saying
anybody turning off the
left or
303,
right turn.
anybody turning off the 303 turning a right should be banned. And the only way to do that is a central reservation.
My concern is tourists, mostly tourists parking on the road. I mean, lots of pedestrians walking up and down. And they're doing that because of what's changed.
I think we understand where you're coming from, Chris. Can we hear from another perspective? Could we hear from Marty, who had his hand up?
That's the best idea. Central Island.
Putting an island, you've got to change. You've got to wipe the road into
Sure, it'll be a big thing, right? Marty, do you want to make your view?
I live on the A36, which is another really fast road, with lots of cars going up and down it all the time. I live on a country road and I've got to turn off. I do that every day, several times a day, right? And no one has come and crashed into me. People see me slowing down, they slow down. I don't understand what all the fervour is about turning off the A303. I really don't. If you are sensible, as you should be anyway, there is no problem. It is just like turning off any other road in the country.
Well, they have actually banned right turns off it. There's a big sign up, so you have to go up, come back,
I do
and do a
understand
left,
that, but I'm
which
just
seems
saying,
fair enough. Yeah.
Well, you know, if I was coming up to the drive from the right-hand side, you know, I put my brakes on, I indicate, put my brakes on, it shows people I'm slowing down.
Sure. I think we're not going to get that right turn back. They've already closed
As
it down.
regards people crossing the drove, for the last 45 years, there's been a council-operated crossing right at Stonehenge bottom. The path comes down the hill on the south side of the 303.
You're talking about on the solstice time?
No, I'm talking about all year long for the last 30 years. There's been a pavement that comes down the south side of the 303, and at Stonehenge bottom it turns right, it then goes across to the island, and then it leads across to what used to be the path that used to be the 344 that's now been grassed over. So for 35 odd years, the Wiltshire County Council have been quite happy for people to cross the drove. Now, quite obviously it's a problem in the summer when there's so many people trying to cross the drove, but the only reason the people are on the left-hand side of the drove is because they cannot access the right-hand side of the drove without going up the road and coming back down again.
Sure.
And it's been, what's made it worse, and actually made it a real issue, is that they've closed the 344. That's making lots of people do it. However, it's not really an issue because you can go up the road, turn around and come down again and turn left into the drove.
Sure.
And the only reason you had this problem with people crossing the road in 303 en masse was because English Heritage blocked off byway 12 and not the one south side of the drove. Consequently, because they couldn't park on the one they used to park on that didn't need them to walk over the 303, they were then forced to park on the one that was available.
Okay,
that, in fact, made it inevitable that they were the drove and that English Heritage were going to use
Thank you very much for that. Mickey's had his hand up for ages. Yeah.
Since before the close of the 344, there was at least 3, maybe 4 times as much traffic exiting the byway 12 onto the 303. Right. Now, I've been sat there and watched it pretty much on and off for the last 5 or 6 years. I've never seen an accident at the end of byway 12, but I've seen loads at the 344 at Stonehenge bottom. where people are pulling out. You can't see behind you because of the angle it goes on to it. Wallet, getting hit by eastbound traffic.
So look, what I want to do...
The closure of the 344.
From Wiltshire Council about Joe.
Okay, so I want to discuss why the management...
As a local resident,
Sure, no, finish.
he has a particular perspective that the rest of the
Okay.
don't have.
What was happening, right, you've got a quarter of the traffic coming off of the end of off the byway 12 onto the 303 as you had before the 344 was closed, because people come over the hill, westbound, they see the stones, they go, oh look, Stonehenge, and they filter off onto the 344, they see the price of the parking at the visitor centre, so they turn up the road, one way or the other. Then when they take your photos from the feds, and then they bugger off up the other way, onto the 303. Right? Now, since the closure of the 344, you don't get it. You've got a fraction of the amount of traffic. Yet the only argument English Heritage and the Culture Minister are coming up with at the moment is, there's lots of people there not paying. They're not paying to go to the stones. It's a health and safety issue. It's becoming dangerous. There's nothing whatsoever on the stopping up from the traffic rig, the public inquiry to stop me going from byway 12 straight across the 303 to Druids Lodge and coming out on the A360. I can go straight across the 303, but not allowed to turn right.
Can I
Okay, so this will be the last point on roads. I really want to move on to bigger picture issues, okay, to do with wider management of the whole site.
This is
Okay.
from
Yeah,
this is in the local Stonehenge Trader,
okay,
and it's this week's. And it's the council notes to propose that Wiltshire, this is Amesbury Council's note, to propose that Wiltshire Council be asked to improve the surface of Byway 12 between its junction with the A303 and the junction with the old A344 to the standard of the same byway with the old junction of the A344 and Larkhill. Following discussion and a proposal by Councillor Fisher, it was resolved to send a letter to Wiltshire Council supporting English Heritage requests to upgrade the byway.
okay.
Councillors' feedback from the visit to the new Stonehenge Visitor Centre. Councillor Crook noted that Amesbury does not feature in the Visitor Centre at all.
Right, so
So
as an
local
Amesbury...
people are massively ignored.
Yeah, sure.
by
Which is
the people
ironic
in
that
control.
archaeologists have just discovered that Amesbury probably built Stonehenge, and that's not featured in anything at all. I just want to just make one final observation about the road issue and the byway thing in particular. From the perspective of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the sort of religious rights issue, I think there's a perception by some people in the community that the attempt to close the byway under the rubric of health and safety issues is actually perceived as an attempt to prevent pilgrims accessing the monument, because traditionally that's where they park up, they can then see, they can go, they can hang out, and some people can even live there for a while, right? Now, I think that what the authorities should take on board, and that includes not just the police, but the people that advise the police and make the policy, and that's the local council, and also to some extent the national government, is they should be seen to bend over backwards not to give that impression to the pagan and religious community that for whom the stones are very sacred. I think facilities should be made available to the pilgrims to be able to park up, maybe in a kind of lay-by setting where you can stop for 20 minutes or half an hour on the side of the road, a large lay-by. Many sacred sites have a kind of lay-by where you can stop and watch for a while. I think, right, well this I think is from the TRC point of view, is showing that there's an attempt to, and this is where it gets a bit worrisome, to prevent people actually accessing the stones, either in their vehicles or on foot, unless they're funneled through the visitor centre and pay fees. What I think we should send a strong message from this meeting is that needs rethinking. Somehow the pagan and the travelling and the Druid community and so on need to feel welcome to these stones, okay? And how the actual road systems are sorted out and which laybys need building, I will leave it to the road planners to decide. But I certainly don't think further closures, which are going to alienate and annoy people, is the route to go. I don't see personally why there shouldn't be also a kind of spiritual pilgrims camp somewhere. There's an awful lot of land around Stonehenge where people can go and stay for a week or two. in a caravan or travelling vehicle. What's wrong with that?
All those letters,
Right.
all those letters are from local residents complaining about the turn-off being changed onto the byway.
The right turn being blocked.
Yes. Access to Stonehenge being limited, and the total chaos in the road system around Stonehenge, and the price we're having to pay.
Yeah.
People aren't happy.
And we've also
declaring.
got a huge increase of traffic because of the closure of the road. It's lovely to turn Stonehenge back to a grassy landscape, but one thing I would flag up about roads, could you just hold your book up and wave it about?
Which one?
In the research that Robin did for this book, which we brought to the meeting, one of the most shocking things I read in there is apparently Robin discovered that when the English Heritage Planning team were investigating traffic flows on the likely impact of the closure of the road that used to run alongside the stones, they did a traffic management operation with, researchers. But basically, apparently, according to the figures she found, they filled the figures so that the likely impact of the road closure was minimised falsely through dishonestly gathering the data at the dead of night when there's no cars going about. And I find that shocking, and I would like to say formally from this meeting, if that's true, and if that could be proved and withstood, then I think personally heads should roll. That kind of falsification of data then leading to the current traffic problem is outrageous, and I would like...
The letter from the local residents at Stag,
Right.
from the Shrewton Traffic Action Group, wrote a letter...
It's all the villages now.
It's all the villages have joined this group now.
Okay.
And they, in their own letter to the council, stated that the same thing, the numbers were fudged, the inaccuracies.
Well, it's totally unacceptable, and an investigation is required. And we're the body that can do that investigation. If anybody's got data on that, can you please ask them to write in and send us the evidence? We can then draw it to the attention of authorities. Did you have a hand up, Doug?
I was just thinking, regarding safety, the actual, obviously, peak of activity on the summer solstice, the actual time when they're kicking people out, as it were, midday, that's a major safety issue in itself. And people have been known to, have accidents that happen because of that, if you like, immediate withdrawal from the site. Obviously very crowded, and people are highly charged and influenced by the stones on that day.
Right.
So that almost comes into the safety angle at least.
If access was extended and the departure times were staggered over a longer period, then safety issue would go down. Yeah. Okay. Right. Did you want to address that?
As at the moment, can we actually take on board that issue is in this proposal, which English Heritage has had for over a year.
Which was tabled just now.
For about 4 years.
That is particular. I have got two questions into the Wiltshire legal team, which are particularly to do with this.
Hang on, can we just do one at a time?
What I'm trying to do is stop us going over and over and over, because I am having a conflict of interest here, because I have got, from Sacred Grove, personal questions in on legal status to the legal department.
Of English Heritage?
No, I don't need to talk to English Heritage. It's Wiltshire.
Okay, the Wiltshire County Council.
Wiltshire, this is why I'm saying we keep talking to the wrong people.
Right.
I'm talking to Sarah Marshall.
Okay.
Only Sarah Marshall.
Of Wiltshire County Council,
yes,
legal department.
in their legal department. Right. I have got two questions which are ongoing. One is risk assessments, the other one is disabled access and shelter.
For what? For the summer
solstice.
I might be able to answer some of that for you.
Well, she's going to have to do it because it's a legal situation now, because there are legal disability questions coming along. Are you
dissatisfied with the disability access?
Yes, that's something I'm trained in. The other thing is, I have got a particular question at the moment regarding what I've spoken to planners about and how they're going to redress actually the byways, and I've got them here, you can have them. They are particular as to the width of the byway when they finish the maintenance, whether there'll be a verge whether that will then obstruct people being able to pull off, and they will answer that, and that's going to come
Well,
up.
maybe you could footnote that in the minutes, that would be very helpful.
So now you know those questions are in, officially.
We don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Don't reinvent
Thank
the
you.
wheel.
I think Rollo's had his hand up very patiently for a long time.
Well, it's just a quick question to Christian, if you don't mind, Chris. As I came over the top on the way here today, was one of your cars on the end of Byway 12. I don't know, there's only to be 2 cars right up at the very top, so I don't know whether that was to stop them.
What time did you come in?
That would be about 1:30, quarter to 2.
Yeah, there was an HTV broken down somewhere along the 303 today, which was causing half the problem.
That's all right.
It's not unusual for it to be like that, to be honest. It's always like that.
The biggest thing that they forget, and they try to fudge over, the biggest thing about the A303 at that point, they tried to fudge over, and that in the local Salisbury Journal, the press are saying, oh, you know, it's the byway is causing all the problems. It's not. You've got 3 lanes diverging into 1 lane on the brow of the hill with Stonehenge in front of you. And that is the issue that is consistently forgotten.
Yeah, I think
Brushed
we all know.
over.
I think we all know. The traffic on the 303 is wild pigs here. You know, and we've had meetings with various different public, which I try to chair around, solving the immediate problems that we have for the traffic congestion and the rat running and all that kind of stuff. And it's going to be
good luck with it. It's going to be. But don't forget the poor spiritual pilgrims that want to park up and just enjoy the stones.
Can I just answer one quick one? Because it's quite the resolution around the table parking. I think this year is going to be really good. They're going to be using the new visitor centre car park, and there's a little minibus that's going to take them from there down to the other one. That's what I've been told. That's what I'm briefing my officers on.
And if you've got any other problems, that is not going to work very well.
Right.
The time is too difficult.
Okay, can we just have Terry's point? You two can have that conversation.
To finish up on a slightly more light-hearted vein in our sort of way, some 10 to 12 years ago we were at summer solstice and I was chatting to Clues Everard, who was in charge at the time, and I said jokingly to her, because when we'd finished doing our bit further, we weren't allowed in that particular year, and 344 was suddenly open to traffic again. It was like a convoy of huge 40-foot foreign buses coming in that had come across the junction that's now closed, coming to the car park. And I said to Clues Everard, it's just like stacking jumbo jets at Heathrow Airport. She said, Terry, you're too near the money, sort of thing. Because they actually flag them and tell them to stop at the services, the Burger King down at Canterbury Roundabout, when the car park is full. That was a system they had at one stage on the old car park. The volume of coaches that were turning right, huge foreign coaches, steering wheel on the wrong side, foreign drivers, never been here before, over the brown hill, like you said, oh, Stonehenge, quick, get over the side of the road. And there's 90 mile an hour, or 70 mile an hour. We haven't had many fatalities, but it was just, that junction sort of had to be closed to improve the standard of Stonehenge. What's happened with the byway is they're purposely not maintaining it where the holes are right by the 303. It's not too bad down the far end by Stonehenge. Where they've almost allowed that to be there to the water to stop people using it, because when they drive into it they have to slow down, otherwise they're going to wreck their cars. I can tell you stories of people wrecking their suspension and all sorts in those big bomb holes. So we're a little bit worried about them actually repairing it in a way, leave it bad to discourage vehicles from using it as a road rather than a RUP, which it actually is. A road used as public park.
It's going to be interesting to watch that. Okay, Willie, do you want to make your point?
Well, there's 2 things to say. If one thing can ask the policeman, I've forgotten your name. Christian. Is the Stonehenge junction with the side road that's been removed, are we still now at a black spot? One of the 3 main black spots in England for traffic accidents?
Which one?
Well, you know the black spots in England. There's 2 up north of England, and there's one. Stonehenge has been the worst black spot for fatal crashes for about 30 years or 40 years or something. Are we still on the black spot list, are we? Because now the junction's changed, the traffic has improved enormously, it's much safer.
I think you asked local residents whether the traffic's improved since that race being closed. I can tell you quite the opposite.
No, that's their run into the shops, but I mean from the point of accidents, there's a lot less accidents on the 303 now in that area. You don't know, in fact, okay. All right. The other thing is about the covering over of the old Roman road that they drove. That's the bypass. When they didn't years ago, you had to go through Stonehenge and say a lot of prayers. They went through Stonehenge. So in terms of hurry, they built a bypass, which is the road we're talking about, so you could just go past Stonehenge quickly. It's all rutted and everything. Well, if you add all shingle and stuff like that to fill in the ruts, it's going to be destroying more archaeology and stuff like that, adding more sort of concrete and stuff to it. And it might actually be better to leave it until we get some real experts to decide what to do about the ruts, you know, because adding things like ancient past, it's one of the oldest roads in the world that we know about, that little track there, and to cover it with shingle, modern shingle, I can't see that being very archaeologically, so, although we have to put up with the ruts, unfortunately, I don't know what to say about that.
Well, they're going to use hugger.
We're going to use what? Cover it with what?
They're going to use hugger,
What's that then?
which is the old stuff that you put on.
Yeah, but it's not local, is it?
Yes, it has to, because it's the only thing that will hold chalk.
Yeah, where they get that from then? Somewhere else, isn't it?
No, locally.
Yeah, but the point is the road's exactly. I found
It was all right.
I found an ancient artifact there recently, just off that road.
It
You
was
know,
all right
we found
until they
an
started
artifact.
fixing it.
Pardon?
It was all right until they started fixing it, and then it's the top surface, which is now called.
Yeah, we're talking about adding more sort of shingle and stuff.
No, they're going to cut the top off.
Okay, can I just move on a
I
little
spend
bit?
hours on it.
We've discussed access by roads. I just would like to say something about English heritage and the question of joined up thinking about this site. Having gone round the visitor centre and taken a little train down to the Stones yesterday, I do just want to say that I think the impulse behind the idea of opening up the wider landscape, which was the whole point of closing the road and grassing it over, which we will eventually see, they've made much more accessible the cursus, for instance. You can stop on the little train at the Fargo plantation, walk to the cursus and come down to the Stones that way. There's better sort of signs, and all over the site are quite helpful displays where you can see how the landscape and all the different barrows fit together. And I think that English heritage should be complimented actually on some of the visionary thinking that's gone into that. I think they're encouraging people to walk more around the landscape and explore it more. However, and this is where we move on to the next item on the agenda, the question of management, I just want to know as a formal question whether any pagan or druid or alternative people actually sit on any of the boards that were making decisions about where to place these billboards, how to manage access in the landscape. Does anyone know, has anyone been invited to, as a kind of spiritual practitioner, to put input into this?
There is a UNESCO meeting on the 20th.
Okay, can we just, this chap had his hand up for a long time. Yeah.
On the Fargo wood there,
yeah.
You haven't put that notice board up, what's shooting because it's got the cursors pointing in a given direction.
Yeah, there's loads of inaccuracies in the English Heritage National Trust and notice board, by the way.
Are
The
there?
cursors are here,
Right.
the board saying this is the cursors, it's pointing towards an hill somewhere. That's on Fargo wood.
Right. So you would like to question the accuracy of some of the notices they put out? Yeah. Well, if you have knowledge about it...
Not the English Heritage and National Trust, they're signposted, many of them are completely wrong. Not
Right.
most are right, but you know...
Well, if you have any specific comments you want to make and you write
To
this body...
I was there to tell you to put me in there. You want to see what they were doing? I said, has anyone noticed that it's wrong? No. Yeah. Too late, they
Right.
copy it in.
Well, this is kind of what I'm asking.
That way, yeah. They haven't lined up properly, have they?
Yeah.
Whoever's made that mistake?
Okay, so that's what I'm asking, is about spiritual knowledge, you know, and accuracy. Okay, Roland.
I've been a member of the World Heritage Site for the last 25 years.
For this World Heritage Site?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have found that gradually, over the course of time, they have gradually started to put into their literature acceptance of the spiritual dimension in general terms.
Right.
But otherwise, there are various issues, such as the droves, such as the skeletons in the museum, etc.,
right.
which they refuse to discuss. Yeah. Absolutely. You cannot discuss them.
Well, you can discuss them, you might not hear the answer you want. Though.
Well, you can start to discuss them, and then they'll ask you to leave. Yes.
Have you tried?
Oh yes,
when you say you've been a member of this board, does it meet
I've
annually?
actually had Council of Protection of Rural England, National Trust, Wiltshire County Council, and various other agencies totally agreeing with me that these questions ought to be asked.
Right.
But it is closed down. Various discussion groups. They call in archaeologists to the various discussion groups that sit around in tables like this and gradually whatever you've got on the agenda, they close it down. But it has changed over 25 years.
Right.
They do recognise spiritual dimension now. But they aren't quite sure what it is, and they just write it up, and then when it comes to actually something important, they don't want to discuss it.
What I'm wondering about the visitor centre, when I went around the museum a bit yesterday, I mean, what they've got is fairly good. There's a good room on sort of antiquarian scholarship into Stonehenge with some excellent prints and books and so on. They've got some rather good archaeology. They've got some snazzy displays using audio-visual technology. They've got a few experts speaking about their own theories, like Tim Darwin talking about Stonehenge, the healing place, and so on. But I do think there was a lack. I felt there should be a whole other room in this museum addressing the spiritual points, because the guidebook makes one very good point. Why are the stones there? And they make the point they weren't there as a defensive thing because they're undefensible. You know, there's no like fort element. They weren't there to be lived in because nobody lived there. So the only reason they were built was as a spiritual sanctuary, a temple which honoured the dead and the ancestors, particularly. That's the only reason they came into existence. And yet that's the one dimension that is not focused in their visitor centre. And I feel, on behalf of the TRC, that had they consulted living sort of, you know, thinkers who've explored indigenous spirituality in Britain, they would have had a fantastic third room they could have put together. Terry?
The problem is, with the archaeologists, can't agree, because nothing's written, on who actually built Stonehenge.
They shouldn't be asking the archaeologists because they're not going to agree.
No, they're very highly paid to put a stop to anything which isn't actually part of the current archaeological perspective. Who's high up in the archaeology?
Sure, but you know,
the main archaeologist, Parker Bowles, I don't quite know.
Parker Pitts. He's the stone. And
the forward in the front of his book, he actually says, "We move the goalposts when we get new information." Basically, that's his preface of the book. He actually says this, right. and he is moving the goalposts slightly in this book. And I've got recent information to do with who actually could have potentially built Stonehenge, and they're completely and utterly ignoring me because they don't want it, because it's not written down.
Would you like to just share that with us now, Terry?
Well, this is all to do with the latest DNA sensitive information.
Right. There's a lot of
it's all to do with temple builders in northern Spain, most of which were removed by Franco.
And Hitler removed all Stonehenge type buildings all through his area he conquered.
Yeah.
Anyway, his special squad found all those brand new bulldozers. Really, and he destroyed all the Stonehenge burial grounds.
Well, lucky he didn't conquer
He didn't
this
get to it.
country.
Hang on, don't shout me down, man.
Sorry.
Please, have some respect.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and they destroyed all Stonehenge burial ground type all across Europe.
Yes.
And the only place, because England wasn't conquered by the Nazis, we still got burial grounds all over England and Ireland, Scotland. But all the rest of it, Franco and Mussolini and Hitler, they all had meetings about, they destroyed everything like Stonehenge.
They wanted to rewrite history.
Bulldozers destroyed, all the library records taken away, town hall records taken away, everything destroyed.
With respect, you just asked not to be shouted down, whereas you shouted this gentleman
I talk very loud, I come from Cockney, East End Cockney.
I'm used to shouting. I've got broad shoulders.
Could you share it with us, please?
Let me try and explain where it's come from. There was a DNA study relating to these anomalies in the northern part of Ireland, not Northern Ireland, the bit on the western coastline, of these people who seem to have Spanish ancestry. That's where it started. And they've now dated them back to a period at a time which fits nicely into when Stonehenge and Amesbury and Orkney were built, at this time when agriculture came to Northern Europe from Spain. So we're linking it in with the agriculture and the DNA, and we've got quite a nice story. There's lots of holes in it at the moment, but the people from Spain are filling it in. I regularly go to Spain to confer with these people who are involved in this. And we've got a nice, reasonably tight story now, but archaeologists are just shouting me down.
Well, they're very
I've
conservative.
actually been sworn at and told to F off by the archaeological community, because they don't want to hear what I'm going to say. I'm only, and the only we had a contact meeting recently when I explained all this, was they describe archaeologists, with my fingers up, describing us as proto-Druids. In other words, they're not prepared to give us or those the pagans that built the site any sort of credence at all, as if these sites appeared magically, fostering lots of chaos theories and aliens and goodness knows what else you want to do, which makes it nice to put bums on seats for Stonehenge for the tourists.
Okay, well I think that maybe we could agree.
We've got to accept the fact that Stonehenge is a cash cow. That's a straightforward fact. Not for us. We're not even the frills around the edges.
Well, I'm not sure that from the perspective of the British public who remain owners of the monument. I just want to move on to C under this thing. The question of ownership, just to remind people. It's actually the British people that still own this monument. Now, this is an interesting legal avenue to explore. English Heritage is only its custodian and steward, appointed by the government of the day, but answerable ultimately to the British people. And if a political party would get into power that was to want to change this, then it would all change. So I think really the question we should ask is actually you and I own this monument, right? We're the British public. Are we happy about the current arrangements, or do we feel that, I happen to feel, that the spiritual side is underplayed in the new visitor centre and generally? I also happen to think that some of the access arrangements could be more generous and more liberal. I think that the point from our local resident here, Mick, that he, as a pagan practitioner, wants to be able to go to that monument when he wants to, at any time of day or night, and say a few prayers. I think he should be allowed to. And he shouldn't have to pay a fee. Well, then I think there's something wrong. And I think this is a reflection on our country's, as it were, soul. We've turned our premier ancient temple into a tourist milk cow, instead of honouring it as a sacred site. Just imagine, let's just for a second, we're in Australia and we're talking about, the great Ayers Rock in the middle of Australia, and it was turned into a kind of...
Well, in fairness, Canterbury Cathedral, you have to pay £15, I think, to get in there now.
But if you want to just say a prayer or go to a service...
Not if you're praying.
Right.
Not if you're just going to a service. So I think the question of ownership, I just want to flag up. Does anyone else feel this is an issue we should remind certain bodies of? Yes.
Can I just pose something that probably maybe not feasible, but just come into my head?
Okay.
In that, if you take somewhere like Caerleon, which has the Roman barracks site, and
in South Wales,
just standing alone with no visitor centre beside it, but in the actual town of Caerleon, not that far away, but it's in the town, is the actual information centre.
Right.
When you're saying that Amesbury is actually ignored as maybe have been the place that was responsible for something.
Well, they found archaeological evidence on Vespasian's camp, which was just on the edge of Amesbury.
Why did they have to build the visitor centre right on top of the stones? Even the Giant's Causeway, the visitor centre, is not on top.
Well, it's nearly 2 kilometres from the stones. It's not.
Yeah, but you know what you mean.
Near Amesbury was a big argument, wasn't it? We all had, But they wanted the money, you see.
We spent years
they wanted to control the land on which Stonehenge stands.
Can I ask a question? Does anyone know the new visitor centre is in a field that used to belong to a farmer? Did English Heritage buy that field? Do they own the land of the visitor centre?
No. They were paying that guy something like £100,000 to use it as a car park for some
So who owns the land of the visitor centre?
It's on lease from Kieran Guinness.
It's on lease from the landlord?
Yes.
For how long? 100 years?
I was told 99 years, I asked.
Most leases are 99 years.
And
I wanted to compliment Rollo on and ask him, it's 25 years he sat on these various before the round table and so on got going. Can I ask, did you experience an element of prejudice and negativity from English Heritage towards your attempt to try and include us more in events?
Well, actually, it's quite interesting in respect of the history from that point of view, because there were some people who you wouldn't expect who were actually very pro us, going all the way up to government and cabinet levels and coming down into English heritage and all the rest of it. Some very, very good like that, and others who you just couldn't talk to them at all because I mean they're just.
I had exactly the same thing in Amesbury. Yeah. Once I started doing the 13-fold moon cycles and the 8-fold sun cycle rituals daily in Amesbury, because we have free and public access 24/7 in Amesbury. When I started doing them all, I got absolute abuse from the parish council. They stand up row with me. I just had to stand there and take it. You know, I just wondered if you'd experienced it. I couldn't believe that the local Christian fact blamed me for bringing all this scum to their little village. You know, I've got those sort of words thrown at me. The old lady screaming at me. Where'd they get this anger from, sort of thing? You know? And this was 12 years ago, sort of touch. So I just wondered if you'd experienced, just to give us some idea of how things have.
Yes, I mean the most particular thing. I mean the chairman 2, 3, 4 back now, when it was Lord Stevens, he was just Jocelyn Stevens as the editor of the what do you call it, a Daily Standard or what it is in London at the time. Became head of Stonehenge and chairman of the commissioners. Now he was quite extraordinary. He was responsible for all this expansion of the landscape and all the rest of it. But we had an agreement. This would only happen if we got access, and he respected that agreement, and he made all the things come through and actually given us access now. So that was where one person kept their word. But unfortunately, he'd also given his word to everybody else that we would be able to walk into the new place, we wouldn't have to pay money and all the rest of it. But then his term of office came to an end, and the present government has changed all the public office things. You can only be in public office for 4 years now. So everybody gets retired and put out, and a new person comes along, and as a result, it's been changed. Now, even if you walk into the environment, you're going to be charged, and etc., etc., etc.
Is that your understanding? Can I just ask anyone here, if you present yourself at the New Visitor Centre and say, I just want to walk to the stones, I'm just a Druid on pilgrimage, are you able to walk freely, or do you have to pay a fee?
No,
you know?
I think you have to pay. You have to pay. They come up to you with a little machine.
Can you define what you're talking about here? Because this is what I picked up when I first started getting involved in this. And I have a legal background in contract law, so I'm very pedantic about words. You keep saying, go to the stones, or in the stones. You have to say what you mean. Do you mean go to the stones? Because I can put my robes on now and I can walk to the stones.
And will you be charged? Will you be charged?
No, I'm saying I can go to the stones.
Yeah, but you can't get into them. Yeah.
You've got to define what you're saying.
No, I mean to go as near as possible.
Inside the stone circle. And until you start defining what you're saying, you get this muddle. You get this muddle back from English Heritage, you get this muddle back from the National Trust. There is no way you can't walk on National Trust land. If the gate is not locked, you can walk on it.
So you, according to you,
I've
we are freely able to walk.
I've spent the last 2 years defining where you can go.
So
It's where you cannot go into the stones.
I understand that, unless you bought special access or
and in no time are you ever allowed to, unless you are not invited. It's that you are allowed to. The word invite is not there. It's not an event. It's managed open access. If we all turn up at winter solstice, and there's quite a few of us as we've done, and you are allowed in, it's not even an invitation. If anything happens to us there, it's our volition. They aren't even allowed to call it an event because of the licensing situation. So when you're saying, I want to get into the stones, you mean inside or toward?
Okay.
I love you're not even allowed inside the stone circle. The tourists aren't allowed into the
No, when we've done winter solstice, you can go to the slaughter stone, you can walk round, but you can't get in.
I think they were talking about if you go to the new visitor centre and say, I want to walk towards the stones, they're not even letting you walk
from the path across the grass.
Along, say if you're going to go to the burial mound.
Has anyone tested this?
Yes. You can park in their car park, which is £5. And then,
£5?
Yes, you've got to pay £5, even if you're a local resident, you've got to pay £5. And then you are free to either buy a ticket, which will allow you entrance into the stone triangle, but not the stone circle.
Yeah, triangle.
Yeah, you can walk around the landscape freely once you've parked up, if you're not using the drone and you don't know about it. But you can do that freely.
So you think you can walk towards the stones freely?
You've got to pay £5 a park, so that the free has already disappeared.
They won't tell you that unless you know, presumably.
Yeah, no.
I didn't see any signs sort of saying, pilgrims welcome here, all you have to pay is the car park, and then you're free to have a...
No.
I think, with all due respect, there should be a sign like that,
They
a
won't
more
put any more
welcoming...
signs up. We've asked.
Right, so that's one issue to
I think
do
you'll
with
find out
control.
this is why Arthur uses the heelstone, because the heelstone is outside the circle, and as it was beside the road,
It will be within the circle.
anyone
now.
could use it. So
It
even,
will
so even
be.
Arthur
The
can't use it.
It's
path will go round the
now the
outside.
fence runs alongside it. They've got this like this platform that you walk along on top of.
Yeah.
That's about
Besides
this
the
far
heelstone.
from the hailstone, which is fenced off.
So Arthur
Got a
can't
rope.
use it. Arthur can't use his heelstone anymore. He's not here.
On summer solstice, yes you can. On
Okay.
summer solstice they take that away, and yes you can have access to the hailstone and this stone.
But the new
But
footpath will go
what
round
Lois
the
is actually saying
outside.
is that we haven't got access to the stone. So
Today, if I want to go
even
in
Arthur's argument about the hailstone, it's gone.
It'll be farther away, in fact.
Yeah, yeah.
So look,
No,
these are
no.
issues to do with the next point, which is to do with
Who
control.
knows?
How,
We did the inquiry.
who,
Yeah, I'll just say this
Yeah.
point.
go for
I've
it.
been out for a while.
I know.
Basically, there's an old road, the avenue that comes from Amesbury, where we were discussing 20 years ago where the Druid Centre, where the visitor centre should be. There's a lot of argument to have it near to Amesbury. Amesbury is very old, one of the oldest cities, towns in the whole country. It's still in use in England, and it was very good to have the whole thing based near to Amesbury. Now, the part of that was opening up. There's a tunnel underneath the 303, just near Amesbury, which covers the avenue from Amesbury to Stonehenge. It's the old way around it. It's filthy, dirty farmers' track, you know. But if they spent a bit about opening that avenue up and that footpath there, that would relieve the problem of people walking on the 303 on Midsummer's Day. I mean, people could come from Amesbury, and it means business would come to Amesbury with taxi drivers, the people would head for Amesbury, hotels, shops, etc. Then they would walk from Amesbury up through that, under the 303, that pathway, which I think most people probably know about it. Yeah. And it's a muddy old farmer's pathway at the moment. It goes under the 303, and they could walk up there through the avenue and approach Stonehenge, the hillside, in the traditional way that's been done for thousands of years. That would make the 303 much safer, you know, etc. Yeah, of course I have, yeah.
Yeah, okay, well that's great. Maybe,
It would bring business to Amesbury and maybe share out the disadvantage that the English heritage have created for the locals by putting the visitor centre as far away from the oldest town in England as possible, you know, so they can they monopolise, again trying to monopolise Stonehenge for financial purposes. You know, so that would bring business back to Amesbury, which the locals deserve. I mean, the locals are descendants of people who built it after all, you know what I mean? And the farmers.
As
and
this
that,
new archaeological discovery is clear. Okay, can we move on to the second? We've given the first item a large space of the meeting. The next point that I just want to emphasise, and maybe some people can speak to this, who've had experience of not being heard, on your specific sort of pagan perspective on Stonehenge. Now, I mean, there is an argument, I think, in law that if this was a Shiva temple in India, and I'm a Shivite priest, and you know the government of India has closed it down and not letting me access it and charging tourists to access it, I think there'd be an absolute
people approach it in holy days and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, there'd be an outcry. So one of the problems about getting the pagan community to take ownership of the situation is, and I just put this to the meeting, that the pagan community in Britain is quite split into different factions, and there's your Wiccans, and your Wiccan X won't talk to Wiccan Y and Wiccan Z, and then there's your different Druid orders who won't necessarily talk to each other. You've got the Pagan Federation, which is supposed to be an umbrella group for them all, but it often doesn't talk to itself, it seems to me. And then you've got, I mean, I set up a thing called the Pagan Academic Network, trying to get academics interested in paganism, and have had a few conferences, but it's very difficult to herd cats, so to say. And then there's sort of shamanic practitioners who come and go and all do their own thing, and they've all trained with this, that, or other master. So how can the pagan community, I mean, it's a question to you, ever speak with a kind of united voice? And it seems to me that as long as they don't, then English heritage and officialdom which has a largely secular kind of face, will continue to own and manage the sacred sites. What do you say to that?
We still have a them and us situation. I turned up for the first time the other week at the round table meeting. They'd had an earlier meeting with all the knobs and dignitaries from Amesbury who all had free cakes and cups of tea and we had none of that. We were all, but we actually were fairly in agreement.
Are you talking about the round table?
I know they were discussing something different, but it wasn't relevant to what we.
Can you just clear what you're saying? You're saying at the round table meeting the other day.
Yes.
You went along to represent, the piece.
Because now Amesbury's part of the World Heritage Site.
And you found that you were only like a tail end.
We were the second act.
Didn't get any free cakes.
Well, we had to scrounge what was left. It wasn't all of it. I didn't get any free cakes.
Maybe Chris will just quickly respond.
I'll just come back because I sit through both meetings.
You sat through both meetings.
Yeah, right, along with them. It's fine. But the first bit is. It's for the professionals. It's for and it would bore the tears off anybody else sitting through it.
I know it's boring, but we still.
But we have representatives.
Need to see us.
The Red Cross.
It's business.
Roy goes
there, and it's business. When it's a straightforward business about where this starts and where that's going to get. Some of it is it's straightforward event planning.
Yeah.
So that's his explanation.
And then the folk who go to both meetings need a bit of grub. And I must say, it's not fantastic grub. It's a little bit of sandwiches and a bit of something or other.
I'm only joking about the grub.
I know, but that's it's actually intended for
Can I just comment on that before handing over to Sheila, which is that what you're saying there is that pagans or spiritual representatives are not professional. They have no professional.
We're not treated as professional.
Yeah, no. Which I think needs to be challenged with all due respect, because I think spirituality is a vocation.
25 years in the door sort of thing. And I haven't come from Amesbury and sat through 15 years of Sacred Sites Forum, but most of the others were just all
Sheila, do you want to just make a point?
The thing that keeps coming into my mind, and I'm just amazed at the amount of knowledge there is around this table. I don't know how often you meet. I reckon you should meet more often. And I was thinking about philosophy, I was thinking about Plato. He said thousands of years ago, there is no freedom without responsibility. And it seems to me that what's happened here is that all the responsibility is being taken on by the big guys out there, and all it needs is a group of people like this to get together, articulate people with knowledge, to say, yes, we are responsible. We want our freedoms, but we are also responsible as a group. And that's, in a nutshell, I think what all of this talking has been about. The fact that freedom feels as though it's been taken away from people on the outside. So it's time to, grab your freedom and your responsibility and go that way. That's how I see it.
Right, thank you for that
simplistic and naive.
No, it's a very profound contribution. Rollo.
Just a couple of things. I think the forward thing with English Heritage is, unless they change their minds, is that they're about to become a charity or hand themselves over to a charity group, which is going to be have its own difficulties about with negotiating. The question you just said, that's lovely. Yes, I mean the round table does that. This is doing this, as you say. I think pagans and Wiccans and Druids as a whole have probably not really wanted to become one unified church body that therefore has a hierarchy and becomes a dictatorship. No, we all stay away from that, and we're all happy to be those who love a certain place or interested in that certain place because they love that place, such a thing. But this is obviously everybody here is here for this particular reason, and this is the forward progress that can get made because at least information has been shared and all the rest of it. All these things went through a terrible period a few years ago where people were, criticising everything rather than bringing solutions or bringing acts or bringing things that work to Stonehenge.
I mean, I think the thing about responsibility, there are bodies like the Council of British Druid Orders that Rollo is represented as Stonehenge officer for as long as I've known him, and I think has acted responsibly. And one of the problems I will say is that often pagans who are prepared to stand up and take a position of responsibility get an awful lot of flack from others which is unfortunate. And I would just say to the pagan community, they need to clean up their act and be supportive of the elders who are prepared to stand up and talk to the authorities, rather than this sort of, you know, backstabbing and bitchcraft that goes on. So that's about being responsible ourselves. And you're absolutely right on that. Yeah, Lois.
I'd like to point out to the meeting, I'm used to chairing meetings myself. We've lost a significant part of this meeting. You don't seem to have noticed you've lost most of the travellers. They're now outside.
Yeah, I did notice.
I have gone out and spoken to them, and I am going to say that I actually agree with them. There doesn't seem to be a capacity. I've only been to the round table meeting once. Don't intend to go again unless I have to. We have been around the periphery of the round table meeting for many years. There are reasons why some of us don't go, mostly safety. There hasn't been no meeting where the notes have been out very easily until recently, when they became easier to find. I put them out on the internet. Roy Gillett goes to these meetings, and somebody else goes to these meetings, and I'm highly security cleared, very highly, and I've never seen any things. I wouldn't know what he does, what he says on my behalf. I don't know what was said at the SNPM. I don't know what happens. Neither do they. They always feel that they're out on a limb, and if somebody who's got a BSc on this feels out on a limb from this RT and the pre-meetings, I heartily agree with them. I would like to know why it's never been noted and why we never get to hear. I don't know if Terry knows what happens.
Oh, no, we have a similar situation with the Secretary's Forum at Amesbury, where the police, fire, ambulance, security guards all sit around and have a separate meeting, and we don't get the minutes of that meeting to know what was discussed, which I agree with you, we would definitely like that. So we could, although you're saying it's a load of councillors rubber stamping what's going on, we'd still like to know. There was a lovely map put up on the wall. We weren't allowed to copy it for security reasons of what's happening this year at Stonehenge. I can see there is some points to do security, to do with possibly drugs dealing or something on a large scale or something like this. I don't know quite what the reason is behind it, but something on those lines. But we are simply felt as if we're not trusted. You agree with me, Rollo? By the powers that be.
What it goes back to is there was a difficulty about doing the minutes. Now, there is a system which is used kind of universally, you could say, up and down the countryside by various bodies, local councils, and all the rest of it, called Chatham House rules. Now, I'm not saying I agree with this, but the system is that you write up all the minutes in the third person. So, the meeting decided, blah, 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 blah. Because what happened previous to that was that it got minuted as individuals speaking, and then individuals got burnt on the internet, and you know, all these terrible sort of like, you know, frame throwing nonsense started taking place. It had nothing to do with what was being decided at the meeting. The first round table meetings are open to anybody to come. So and then got to get presented to everybody so that everybody knows what was decided and how it got decided and what discussion was about, but not so as any one individual traveller or any other person gets put in the frame for a blasting from people who read this and go, you bastard.
Well, they seem to have fudged this, because I've actually got a copy of the minutes of the round table here in front of me from the last meeting. And what they now do is they put the initials after.
I wonder who suggested that.
But you have to know the secret code of the initials. So if EP or PH makes a comment.
It works everywhere else. In every other meeting I've ever attended, in all my professional life.
I must agree with you. I think you're absolutely right there. They're kind of like, it's all coming from London. They're telling you like what to do.
No problem.
It's a sort of secretive thing.
It's very secretive, but it's all jealous shit, and then just
to be honest, the round table meetings that I attended, if you were to hear